What's up, and welcome back to Nowstalgia Pod, giving you your weekly look at what's going on in pop culture. My name is Pat Sheen, joined, as always, by my trusty co-host, Dave Martin Swagger. Dave, what's going on, man?
Not much, man. Just waiting for those Four Town tickets to go on sale. How we doing?
Well, while you're waiting for that, I'm fully behind Lewis Hamilton now, buying all the gear, supporting Mercedes after
Yes.
binging F1 Drive to Survive, which we will be discussing, as well
Right side
as
of history.
I'm looking forward to talking about that in a second. We're going to touch on some music, some TV, and some movies today. So before we do, hit that subscribe button if you're watching on youtube.com/nostalgia pod and give us a 5-star rating on Spotify. We appreciate you. Dave, let's start with music though, where I was perusing the new Music Fridays, and I take a look and I see that my guy Rex Orange County, who I've come to be a decent fan of. I wouldn't say I'm like deep into his older stuff, but I pick and choose a couple of the hits here and there for my low key, like smooth, relaxing playlist because that's kind of the music that I know him for. If you've listened to Tyler the Creator's Flower Boy, he was on a few tracks from that, including the opener Forward. Um, and I believe he's on the title track on that, right?
Boredom as well.
Boredom.
Yeah,
That's right.
good song.
Um, and so uh, I was going into this just thinking we're going to be getting some, upbeat, fun, not really notable songs, nothing too outside of Rex Orange County's box. And I think we got a lot of that, but I do think there's a little bit more here than I'd heard in some of his past songs. And walked away being not only pleased hearing a Tyler feature on this,
Hmm.
but also I think there it feels like a little bit of growth for Rex coming out of this, and
Interesting.
it's set to be one of his biggest releases ever, with probably going to be a number one album in the UK. What did you
Right.
think going into this album?
Yeah. So, been aware of Rex Orange County for a while. This is the fourth record, second major label album from him. And I don't know how I became aware of him exactly. I think it's just the recognizable, unique name, probably years ago. Like I feel like I knew who he was, or knew the name before the Tyler stuff. But in the interim, he's become quite successful and quite popular. He has several big hits, and the last record was really successful in the UK. And he's still only 23, so he's definitely uh, rising talent with an established career at this point. Pretty impressive. Um, but I've never really had too much of a too much an opinion of his solo work. I've kind of treated him a lot like Love, like those kind of
Mm.
like soft pop people that I just feel like they all kind of sound the same to me. But as the stream suggests, has a certain appeal, I guess. It's inviting and accessible and unobtrusive and all that jazz. But yeah, I can't say I noticed any Rex Orange County growth, but I also am not like running back the other records enough to really speak to that.
You're
To
not
me,
going
it just
back to
kind of
Pony
sounded
all the
more
time.
of what he's up to, and I'd imagine it's going to be quite successful to him. I heard one song in particular I thought was definitely an earworm, but yeah, I think this is definitely his lane. He knows he knows why he's at this point in his career.
Yeah, I think where I heard growth for him, and again, not as someone who I would say is an expert on his catalog, but has listened to a decent amount of his songs. Not only working in more strings on Who Cares, and the strings are present in almost every single song on here, which a lot of his hits don't really include that. And I think that really expanded his sound, made it sound a little bit more full, and also was able to pull in some more emotion to what he was going for. But I feel like this is just more consistent straight through with some of the songs I've heard. I think my experience with Rex Orange County is I'll hear a song that will really catch my ear, something like Always or Loving Is Easy with Benny Sings. And those songs just get stuck in your head. They're very like bubblegum soft pop, like you were talking about. And then I'll be like, I want to go listen to the rest of his stuff. A lot of it from the past, I just really was like, that's not as catchy as the other song, or it doesn't really grab me the same way. I felt like this album pretty consistently held my attention, and I felt like most of the songs were at least catchy, if not pretty good overall. So I was pleasantly, I guess I don't know if surprised, but I was really pleased with what Rex put out there. You said at one song caught your ear. What was that?
Yeah, that would be amazing off this
Mm.
new album. That one just quite groovy, has a really catchy hook, and I could definitely see that one having a long tail for sure.
Yeah, I think "Amazing" was one of the standouts. I do feel like the beginning of this album caught my attention a bit more than the back half. Like I think "Keep It Up" into "Open a Window" with Tyler into "Worth It," and then "Amazing" is a great opening 4 song run. Um, Something like 7 a.m. I also thought was pretty interesting. Again, kind of relying on some strings to pull in like a more like a full sound to it, and really just again like you mentioned, that grooviness, something you can kind of just put on and like relax to, chill out to, boost your mood to. And I think overall I'm not going to be coming back to this. I'm not going to be coming back to Who Cares at the end of the year and being like
Yeah.
groundbreaking album, not something I'm going to really remember. But I had a couple of tracks I think I'm going to throw onto a relaxing playlist that'll pop up every once in a while and I'll enjoy it. And that's what Benny, or not Benny, that's what Rex Orange County is to me at this point. So
Right.
uh,
Yeah.
not going to fault him for it at all.
Uh,
Any last thoughts?
Obviously, cool to see the re-linking up with Tyler, the creator. In general,
Mhm.
always glad to see Tyler, no matter what he's up to. But thought that was a pretty solid verse, honestly. Didn't uh,
Yeah,
didn't phone it in. Sounded good.
yeah, especially because for his demo, probably not going to be a verse many of his fans just find organically. So he
Totally.
very much could have mailed that in, but definitely didn't. And we're going to put probably Amazing onto our Nostalgia Best of 2022. So check that out on Spotify. Dave, I finally did it. You know, a couple of years back, uh, when you started getting into F1, we made a promise to each other, right? And that was that we would give each other a homework assignment and we would watch it. And you said, you got to watch F1 Drive to Survive. I waited till now to do it. And I told you, you have to watch I Think You Should Leave. And I think you checked out an episode or so. So
Mm.
we're copacetic at this
I'll
point.
watch the next season. Don't worry.
Keep kicking that can down the road. Um, Yeah, so I threw on F1 Drive to Survive and I was like, oh, I thought this was just like the first couple episodes. Maybe we'll get some more as things go
Season 4.
on. Season 4, no, just completely dropped on March 11th. And I was like, I'll skip around on this. Nope, sucked me right in. Binged the whole thing on the weekend. I have a lot of thoughts about it, but mostly
Yeah.
just how the hell is anyone a Red Bull and Max Verstappen fan? That's where I got to start with this, dude. Fuck that guy. Fuck that team.
Leave the comments. The Dutch are mad, but I don't care. Yeah, this is I'm glad to see that you watched, and I think this is presents an interesting perspective because you do not watch Formula One and you just watch all of Drive to Survive. This has largely been, and I recently last year was in your boat. However, after watching Drive to Survive seasons 1 through 3, I became a Formula One fan and watched the entire season. Now, purists, longtime Formula One fans have, mixed thoughts on Drive to Survive fans, as we are called. However, it's definitely boosting the popularity of the sport in North America. Ratings were up like 40% in the US in 2021. You really can't deny that. They just added a second race in Miami coming up in May. But I think like it's just hard to deny that this kind of documentary series about a sport, individual athletes, probably specifically, is just super compelling when you have all the narrative, drama, and personalities that a sport like Formula One has. And really just hats off, I think, to Box Films, the production company that has made this series, because it's just really ripe for this kind of treatment. And Box to Box Films is now also developing a similar series for golf and tennis, which I think both also fit this well. But the world of Formula One, I think, is just really cool to see portrayed this way. And I have a unique relationship to the season four, because now that I've seen the season, or the season of sport already, I just keep looking at like stuff that was left out because I already know the story, you know? So to me, it wasn't quite as gripping as it was the first time around when I watched seasons 1 through 3 when I didn't know anything. But I still think it's really cool to just kind of like see that behind the scenes and get all those confessionals and everything. So why do you think season four, why did it bring
Yeah,
you in as someone who had not been paying attention to F1?
I mean, I was watching this like a basically just like a reality TV show. You know, it
Mm,
has the elements of
yeah,
a really good one, which is there's built-in inherent drama between all of these teams, and uh, you know, uh, Verstappen and Lewis and the Toto and the Red
Horner.
Bull guy, yeah, Horner. Like there's just so much like built-in drama right there, just in this chase between these two teams.
Mm,
Um, I think the series obviously thrives the most when it's focusing on the drama between them, and um, I think it naturally kind of divides people. These two teams, which is also
yeah.
obviously great. It's like the Red Sox and Yankees, or
Oh my god.
any of those great rivalries.
Social
Um,
media was a fucking wasteland last season between
I can
Mercedes and Red Bull fans.
I can only imagine. Um, but you know what was really great about it was, um, if you were coming just to see some amazing scenery of Europe, it's a great travel
Oh yeah.
documentary. The way it's shot, it's absolutely gorgeous when they're going around. What was it, Monaco?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, one of the most beautiful like scenes, just driving around with I forgot which driver it is, but
Yeah, Leclerc and Sainz, the
yeah,
Ferrari boys driving
yeah,
around. Leclerc's like, "Yeah, there's my first school."
yeah, just incredible stuff. Um, that you see them like going out in the water at times, and
Mhm.
just like making fun of rich people who can't afford huge yachts and just have like regular size sailboats there. Just amazing stuff. And then I think what is interesting if you're a sports fan
Yeah,
is the strategy of like team building, and like how you like I think putting yourself in the shoes of like the teammates who aren't at the top. Someone like the second car for Mercedes,
yeah,
Vatlari,
Bottas, yeah,
yeah,
Valtteri Bottas and
Valtteri,
George
yeah.
Russell, who they gonna pick for Lewis's teammate next year?
So much, so much built in just drama, and really like thoughtful stuff that if you're a sport fan, I think makes sense. If you're watching just to kind of enjoy drama in general, makes sense.
Mm,
And then obviously the ending is just totally polarizing. I do have to say, as someone who's not a F1 fan, I was all in until the very end. I felt like that decision in some way kind of like marred the outcome of the season for me.
mm.
Very controversial, and in talking to you, seems like it wasn't just me who saw it that way. And I was a little bit disappointed and felt like it feels a bit like the intervention of the judge there. Was it
Yeah,
Massey or
Michael Massey, the race director. Yeah,
and then his dismissiveness to Toto afterwards just kind of left a bad taste in my mouth. Kind of like, it feels
yeah,
like Verstappen didn't actually win this, So
I know.
tough overall ending, but really really fun season to follow.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is this is the first season in a long time where there's been a genuine title fight, literally down to the final race, tied in points for the drivers' championship. Um, I think that's why there was so much hype about this season of Drive to Survive, because in the past, this whole turbo hybrid era has just been dominated by Mercedes and dominated by Lewis. So to have someone actually challenge and push Lewis, and obviously Max shouldn't have actually won, but he almost won, and he's, you know, worthy of winning under normal circumstances. Obviously, the proof is in the racing. You know, he won 10 times last year, but this season, Drive to Survive actually has even more of a focus, I think, on the Mercedes versus Red Bull of it all because it was such a dominating force in the season, especially at the end. And that's actually where I was a little disappointed because I thought there's just so much meat on the bone, things they left out. They kind of skip over some of like the early like Mercedes coming back and Lewis kind of like chopping down Max's lead, and we pick it back up in Saudi Arabia, second to last race, where there's more controversy between them, you know, crashing and then of course into Abu Dhabi at the end there. So like I couldn't help but just be disappointed that we didn't see the Brazil stuff at Interlagos portrayed, where like because that's like something like when it happened in real life, I was like, oh, this is going to be amazing in the Netflix show, where Lewis gets dinged for like a regulation thing with his car, and he has a hard penalty and the engine penalty on top of that. Sprint race format, he has to make up like he makes up like 15 spots for qualifying, and he still wins the race when they actually do the race. It was a crazy thing. Where at the time we thought like Lewis's title shots are probably done. There's no way he can win this race. He needs to win this race, and he wins the race. And they just completely gloss over it. And they're like, and Lewis wins at Brazil. It's like there was so much about Lewis winning at Brazil that just isn't on this series. And I thought that would have been really cool to show people that uh, didn't, you know, see it happen when it happened. But
Yeah.
was there anything like outside of Lewis versus Max of the season that stood out to you? You mentioned the Mercedes deciding who to pair with Lewis, you know, Russell or Bottas. You mentioned that. Anything else stand out?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the stuff with Botas. I mean, it just feels like he's a driver who, if he's on any other team, could be a number one easily, and
Yeah,
potentially
exactly.
pushing for wins. So it's a little tough to see them pick George over them. But I guess it's kind of similar to like a MLB team picking
Yeah,
a prospect over a vet kind of thing. I
yeah.
don't know.
A
I don't know
lot of
if I
hype.
agree with the decision.
Mhm. I I think it was the right call. There's a lot of hype for George this year. George won F3 and won F2 in his first seasons there. He's considered like one of the best, if not the best, of this young crop of guys. He just hasn't been in a Ferrari like Leclerc. He's been stuck at Williams during a really bad time at Williams. So we'll see, you know. And I think they reminded you of how he did at when he filled in for Lewis in 2020 when Lewis had COVID. Like the talent's there, but yeah, it's hard not to feel bad for Botas, who's been in Lewis's shadow the whole time, and you know has to do the team order stuff, which they reiterated once again. It's just like now the thing is they didn't even mention this in the season. He's at Alfa Romeo now. He got a new gig, and he's
Yeah,
number one, and he has a multi-year deal for the first time. He had been on 1 year deals every year at Mercedes. I wish we had more time and they could have glossed over that because Bottas seems like super at peace coming into this year about being at Alpha, even though Alpha is a significantly worse team and less competitive team than Mercedes. And
gotcha.
we just didn't get that, you know. And
Yep.
in past seasons, they would talk about like what happened to people. Like they had Alex Albon episode at the end, like Alex lost his seat for 2021. Like we didn't have any of that kind of stuff this year. I thought that was kind of odd. But they didn't mention who replaced George at Williams, which is Albon coming back. Like um, stuff like that. I thought it was a little strange, just because like if you want to tell the story of the season, I think there's just a lot of stuff that should be told. Like this series, you probably didn't even notice, but I mean, there were two teams that are just not in this season. There's
I
Alfa
had no
Romeo.
idea.
Alfa Romeo's not there, which is particularly notable because Kimi Räikkönen retired this year, the longest running racer ever. He had the most starts ever, former world champion. He retired. I understand why they didn't have it in the series because he hates talking to the press. He hates doing all that shit. So I get it. But also, Aston Martin is not there at all. You see Vettel like for a split second, but like so like this is leaving out two teams, I guess, because there's not really much of a narrative to try and weave into the season. I guess I understand it. You know, we get a lot of time with Yuki Tsunoda, which I thought was pretty
Yep.
cool because I think he has a specific story. Obviously, coming from Japan as a rookie, having like a bit of a culture shock, and like I think they did a good job of like explaining like they had to move him basically from England to Italy to get better performance out of him and just make him more professional,
Yep.
which is what people were saying at the time, and it bore out, and his results got better. Did you like the Yuki stuff?
I thought that was interesting. Honestly, I think just based on where I was at in my binge that day, I was kind of
Yeah.
fading on it a little bit. But also, I think I was kind of at that point expecting to hear something from Verstappen. I kind of
Yes.
thought I was
Right.
going to hear him, get his own episode, and it just never happened. He just didn't want to be on the show.
He did not want to be on the show. He thinks it twists narratives and isn't real and stuff. And obviously, they spin a story on Drive to Survive, and most people involved in F1 acknowledge that, but also speak to the benefits of the series. But
Right.
Max is just kind of curmudgeon about it. And of course, this is the year where be anything but you could tell during press throughout the year he hated talking about all his collisions with Lewis. He hated all the drama. I just think he's a kind of shitty personality, honestly, for a superstar athlete. Like he just kind of like is a dick, you know.
Huh.
Versus Lewis, who's been famous for so long and is like super great about talking about himself.
Yeah. Yeah, and Lewis comes across just so I mean, exactly like you want a champion to be. He's level-headed. He's always
Yeah,
calm. It seems like he's very likable, obviously, and I don't know if they touch on it in earlier seasons, but him being the only black racer in
yeah,
the whole thing is obviously something that I think is notable, and I wonder if it's a narrative that they choose not to actively talk about or just have
yeah. It
in
was
the
bigger
past
last
to want to beat
season
that
for
horse.
sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so definitely interesting. I wanted to ask you as a fan, obviously there's a lot that you're like, huh, I wonder why they didn't include that. But
mm,
was there anything that you saw that you either didn't know about or you were like,
yeah.
oh wow, that was great to see?
Yeah, so definitely, I think overall, I was definitely like noting stuff that I like was left out just because easier to remember. But there was like a moment or two that I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. Didn't know that. And one of them actually randomly was the episode about Haas. Obviously,
Oh,
the last place team. They didn't develop the car. They went into 2021 expecting to be worse because they just didn't try and be anything but worst because they were saving money for this year, new regulations, all that stuff. But we still got an episode about Haas. I think it's good because Gunther Steiner, their principal, like Haas's version of Toto and Horner, Steiner is just like hilarious, and I find him so funny. And having him talk about Haas and how about their struggle, I'm always here for. But there was one moment, when Mazepin uh, was talking about the race in Russia, his home race, and he
yeah,
talked about how like he saw the clouds, and he's like, when I would leave school, when I saw those clouds, it was always going to rain. So I knew that it was definitely going to rain, and thus we need the inter tires. And I was like, oh wow, I didn't know that Mazepin made the call there on the wets early, which definitely helped him.
pretty. That's pretty cool. Actually, I didn't note that in my brain, but that is an interesting point. Uh, I think that is one piece where it's a little bit hard for me to get fully into the sport, only because like if the car is just better, it just gives such an
Yeah,
advantage.
right. Yeah, that's the thing. It's kind of like you have like various battles, like your team at the front, your team right behind the front, your midfield, and then your back markers. And it's kind of like narratives and stories about all those individual components. I think just for me in general too, it's like seeing the learning more about the sport once you watch it. Like for what gets me really excited is like seeing the strategy and trying to see if like can Lewis pull this out and win with Max in front? Can Lewis hold off Max, who's trying to do the same thing? Like kind of seeing how it all comes out. It's really a big game of chess
Right.
for teams, especially when teams are of equal playing field. And I think the Williams episode in season 4 did a good job of showing how teams that don't have the technical advantage can try and play their own game of chess to try and, score ground. And that was like a big thing that Jos Capito was like trying to do with Williams is like our car isn't good enough on merit. We have to find other ways to try and score. And I think it's kind of like the whole package you kind of have to be absorbed in. But yeah, I mean, like it's not like a normal sport. Like I'm a Haas fan. I'm always a Haas fan because, like, well, you can't just be a Haas fan because
Right.
Haas is just going to come in last this year. So obviously, you need to have other things to pay attention to and like. So I think in general, F1 seems, to, especially nowadays, with social media and stuff, F1's definitely a driver sport. People really like the personalities and stuff. Like Leclerc is like super popular, even though he hasn't won in 2 years. Like I think that kind of thing is the way you kind of have to approach it, because once you do it that way, it's like all kinds of other sport and
Right.
documentary series, like all kinds of reality TV, personalities, drama, narrative, storyline. Like it's everything else you want is all there. You just kind of have to, I guess, find the way to grasp it. But
Yeah.
it
No.
is kind of unique. But I think
I
the reason I like it more than say like other forms of racing is that there's only 10 teams. There's only 20 drivers. There's a limited amount of people involved. And I think that's what's cool because you really kind of understand everyone there.
Yeah. No, I think that makes a lot of sense to look at it that way because when it comes down to it, sports are becoming more and more about the players and people being
Yeah.
fans of individual players rather than teams. So, definitely a fun watch. I don't know if I'm gonna be an F1 fan after this, but I'll probably be a fan of the series. So, I'm looking forward to whatever's next, and obviously hearing your updates on the weekends. When does the season start back up? Like a week or so, right?
Uh, this weekend. Yeah. So
Wow.
obviously you're not watching this one. Getting you're getting married this weekend, so you cannot
Yes.
watch the Bahrain Grand Prix. But yeah, it's kicking right off, and it goes until the end of the year, more or less. So I think that's the other thing too. Is like they only race like 2 or 3 times a month in season, so it's not like that hard to keep up with anyway.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think season 4 overall, it wasn't quite as compelling for me. Not quite as sure if that's just because I know too much now, or that they just cut it in a different fashion. But overall, the one thing I wanted to see was how they treated the controversy at the end of the year at Abu Dhabi with Max and Lewis, and I thought they presented that fairly and objectively. Will Buxton, the journalist, just explaining broadly, out in the open, what happened and why it benefited Max and why it was
The
unusual. And
only
they just
Max.
just completely said it is what it is. So I
Mhm.
liked how they treated that. The other thing I was looking forward to or interested in was how they were going to talk about Mazepin, because Nikita Mazepin is no longer in F1, and because of his father's ties to Putin as a Russian
Ah,
oligarch. And Mazepin was only really in F1 because of his dad's money. He was a bad driver in F2, not good enough to get to F1 on merit. He was there because of funds, and they had a whole big thing about how his dad was basically bankrolling the team last year for this year, where Haas will get back up, back off the back foot. Mazepin's gone, and they just didn't acknowledge it at all, even though it happened about 2 weeks ago. So whatever. Um, that was the other thing I was looking forward to seeing how they treated it, just because it's a very unique situation to have
yeah.
something like that come up. But I guess I just wanted to keep the political implications out of it, and maybe next year's season they'll actually note it. Who knows? But yeah,
I know. I know you said that they're doing this for golf. Could you ever see them doing anything like this for like one of the four major sports in the United States?
I don't
I mean,
think so.
like,
I think there's too many people.
yeah,
Like a baseball team. There's just too many people. Like and
right.
like they already do hard knocks with football. Like I don't
I
know
was
how
gonna
you
say
do
that. Yeah,
something different. Like I think
yeah,
big teams it doesn't quite fit.
yeah. No, it's just so compelling, and baseball needs something like this because
Mm,
I mean, we're they pretty much tried to kill themselves with this collective bargaining agreement fiasco
yeah.
and the lockout. So needs some sort of rejuvenating. I don't want to lose baseball, but uh, yeah, I think you're right. Big teams not meant for this style, but definitely check out Formula One Drive to Survive. Even if you're not a fan, I think you'll like it. Let's stay on TV though, and moving to Amazon, where Marvelous Mrs. Maisel season 4 concluded. Notably, this is the penultimate season. Um, we're getting uh, I don't know, a lot of the same stuff, and it feels like maybe some stuff moving in different directions. But I guess maybe we'll just start with overall. Did you enjoy this fourth season of this series that we used to love so much?
Yeah, I did. And it's like you said, it's not like Marvelous Mrs. Maisel is doing anything different. It's really not doing anything different. And for a lot of people, that's been a negative post season 1. But I think this is my second favorite season of the series,
Hmm.
because I just thought like even though it was kind of familiar, most of it, I thought that it was just all pretty high level as far as the show is concerned, and I just generally enjoyed my time with a lot of those subplots and the main plot and stuff. So I did like it, but it isn't reinventing the Maisel wheel.
Yeah, definitely not. I did really enjoy this season. There just were some things that I kind of just felt like the show feels like it's really like just biding time, spinning its wheels, not really trying to go in any direction. It felt a bit unfocused at times. Now,
Mm.
where that unfocused direction took us was, I think, some fun little adventures, some fun little side plots. But I don't know. It's a bit frustrating because I don't know if I see the vision with some of it, like
Mm.
the stuff with Midge and oh man, what's her name? Not Susie, the tall blonde one.
Uh, uh, Sophie Lennon, played by Jane
Sophie, yeah.
Lynch.
I was gonna say Susie. It's Sophie. With Sophie coming back, just felt so like okay. I guess we have to pull this back in, and I understand it's I guess setting up some sort of probably overall showdown between Susie and Sophie and Midge in season 5, but felt a bit superfluous. Wasn't really sure why that needed to even come back in the season. You get some fun stuff with Lenny Bruce who kind of like pops in and out, but again, at times I was like, I either just want them to do it or not at this point because this like will they won't they was pretty frustrating, and that definitely paid off. Um, but I think overall, I just ended up kind of being like, okay, where did this season move us to? And if nothing
Right.
else, it's just a hang kind of show at this point, which wasn't where what I thought it was going to be in season 1.
Yeah. I mean, I think the thing is like having having Midge's
Hmm.
career completely stall this season post what happened with Shy Baldwin, and having Midge not really at any time put herself in a position to unstall her career. Is just going to make it feel like the treadmill for the
Right.
show. And I think I just took more enjoyment out of other stuff. Because like, okay, well, Midge's career, like they've kind of just hammered home the point that like Midge is like arrogant and overconfident and wants all this creative control, even though she hasn't accomplished anything. Like they've
Right.
kind of like made that super clear at this point. So I'm not even like that invested or like rooting for that to change at this point. It's just like all the other stuff, like seeing Luke Kirby as Lenny again,
Hmm.
getting a lot of Lenny. He was like a series regular this time around. Like you said, they pay off the will they won't they. They pay off the sexual attention finally, but they also have Lenny do or Kirby do like
Yeah.
bits and pieces of Bruce's iconic 1961 Carnegie Hall stand-up set.
Hmm.
And at the end of that, you have this showdown, like the standoff between Midge and uh, uh, Lenny, and I thought that was
On the
handled
stage
really
of
well.
Carnegie Hall.
Yeah, I thought that was handled super well. I thought that was written really good. Kirby really affecting as Lenny, just making like a passionate plea to Midge to take her career in a different direction.
Mhm.
Uh, I think they really paid off their relationship to this point, which largely had been played for more for laughs than anything else. But like I think the emotional beats really hit at the end of the season.
Yeah, no, I agree. I loved that final confrontation between them, and it felt really earned. Like I think you were
Mhm.
saying. I think when it comes to Luke Kirby, he absolutely kills this role, and it was awesome to see him like doing the stand up as Lenny Bruce and seeing the reaction to it all, and just kind of seeing like Carnegie Hall at that time, and with all the people in like period garb was definitely very cool. Um, I was like thinking about like where like what do I want to actually happen between them in the end? So there's obviously no shot that they end up together. Lenny Bruce famously overdoses, I think, just a few years from when this
Right.
is being.
And they do allude to that, I think, kind of
Yeah,
tactfully as well, that he's using.
absolutely. So it's like a mentor lover type of thing, and it seems like that conversation obviously Midge takes it to heart with where seeing the sign that says "Go Forward" when it's the Gordon Ford show at the end. Um, and the show is really at its best when it's whirring and moving. I think about like the scenes that really stood out to me the most, like Midge getting the stripper joint into shape, like whipping the whole
Mhm.
place up and like running around, talking, moving, that type of thing. That or like Susie when she's in her office and has a million different things going on and she's just kind of navigating, quick talking, all these different conversations, quick one-liners. That's when the show to me is the most fun and captivating. I think when the season really felt like it was kind of spinning its wheels to me, it was like the stuff with Moish, having the heart attack at the end of the season. While there were some really wonderful, heartfelt moments that paid off from that, it also kind of felt like, do I really want to be in this hospital with May and Joel right now? Like, do I really want to be
Yeah.
seeing this? Do I really care about like who's going to be the kid's like stepmom and like what their that dynamic is? I don't. And like a lot of the stuff with May, I felt like no offense to that actress, but I felt like she really took a step back this season almost. Like there's that
Mhm.
scene where she tells Joel that she's pregnant and she's like, I'm a doctor, I'm a doctor. And I just like had to like cover my eyes. I felt like that was a really difficult scene to get
Yeah.
through. Um yeah, that was probably my least favorite part.
I would also say I don't think the show has proven itself capable of handling the racial dynamic that it
No.
acknowledges. It's like these very particular Jewish family will have some thoughts about marrying a non-Jewish Chinese woman, and like the show is like points that out to you, but I just don't know if like they know how to handle that, and they
Yeah.
don't actually try and tackle it in the season at all. They've kicked the can down the road, so we'll see, I guess. But yeah, like Abe's speech for Moish, if he had actually died, I thought that was like really great, and Tony
Yeah.
Shalhoub was awesome in that. So like
Another
that kind
Emmy
of like saved
performance.
that whole like plot for me
Yeah.
in the end. But earlier, like I really like having Jason Alexander uh come back and cameo.
Yeah.
I thought he was just really funny. And all the stuff with Rose and like the matchmaker mafia throughout the city, I
Yeah.
thought was like really, really funny.
Yeah. The
Um,
Godfather references throughout was
yeah,
just a nice
totally,
touch.
totally. Um, and then like I didn't like seeing Midge perform for Jackie Kennedy and crew and having that go
Oh my
completely
god.
wrong. It makes complete sense for her arc, how it had been going, but just like cool to see stuff like that too. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
with that scene, I didn't realize where it was going. Like,
Mhm.
because when she started telling the story, I was like, oh, this will play for laughs. And then, like the way it turns, and you just hear the crying, you're like, oh.
Yeah.
And I guess Midge just like totally unaware of that.
Yeah, I don't think
Yeah,
how it probably wasn't super public information at the
at that point,
time.
yeah,
Not sure.
he wasn't president yet, so
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if that's where it was specifically going to go, but more like, oh, that was just like over the line for these
Mhm.
this class of women. Women. They're like they don't want to hear that kind of raunchiness. That's where I thought it was going, but
Right.
then it actually got much more specific about Jack. So, alas,
Yeah,
how'd you feel about Susie this season? Susie
I
Meyerson and
actually
Associates.
I thought this was Susie's strongest season
Yeah.
by far. For me, I like I was saying, I think some of my favorite scenes were when Susie is kind of like finding her stride in separate from Mitch. The stuff where she's encouraging the magician to like stick with his act and like how she really believes in him, or finding the black comic with her secretary who she wants to fire then chooses
Yeah.
not to, and that whole dynamic was really great. And yeah, I thought Alex Borstein this season was just phenomenal, getting a little bit more screen time and
Right.
well, just a lot more meat on the bone for her. So I loved her. I get the sense you felt the same.
Yeah, I agree. I thought everything once it started to roll together, like her with the office and like all her
Mhm.
associates and contacts and stuff, like the mob guys and her secretary, and I think that's all working really well. But like you said, the Borstein performance is like super strong. But just
Mhm.
there's a lot of like I think meaningful like plots with Susie, independent or at least a little bit removed from Midge, that makes it
Yeah.
feel more meaningful for the character. I also thought the stuff with Jackie's death
Yeah.
was done really well, which is basically a tribute to the actor Brian Terradina, I believe, who
Mhm.
actually had passed away in 2019 due to an overdose. I thought that was a really like warm gesture from the show to kind of write that in why he's no longer on the series, but just a great moment from Susie as well.
Yeah, definitely a great moment, and um, I thought it was a great way to kind of set up where she's going because, as you can see in the acts that she has, Midge, a female comic at the time, who is difficult and has the potential to kind of rise up, but female comics not very common at that point, other than Sophie, obviously. And then she,
Right.
a black comic, a magician, like finding all these people. I do have to say, just going back to the magician real quick, the scene where Rose gets hypnotized and does her whole act, I thought that was absolutely phenomenal. That and
Yes.
the Ferris wheel scene were probably two of my
Right.
favorites of the whole series. Just absolutely hysterical.
And we mentioned this when we talked about the premiere, but the whole bit about them changing Ethan's birthday is perhaps
Yeah.
the funniest thing they've ever done. Like I was legitimately dying. I thought that was hilarious.
It just wasn't a convenient time for us. So,
Yeah. Well, it wasn't
um,
convenient for your mother either.
yeah,
I also really liked Abe as a critic at the Village Voice, and the whole fallout of him trashing a community member's play and
yeah,
getting all the hate in Temple as a result.
hmm
Just Abe is just like such a great time. Whether he's
yeah,
doing like meaningful stuff or completely meaningless things, it doesn't matter at all. Like the Tony Shalhoub performance is like just so finely tuned,
yeah.
and I thought Rose also like she's kind of been more up and down I think as like an individual character, but I thought it
Mhm.
was a good Rose season as well.
Yeah, I agree. So, I mean, I think as we kind of get down to it, there's a lot that we liked. I think the show is moving in some sort of direction for the finale. Anything anywhere you expect it to go? Anything you want to see in this last season coming up
The only thing I don't want to see is Midge getting back together
with Joel?
with Joel.
Yeah,
Don't fucking do that,
I think
please.
it's gonna happen.
I know. I think so too.
I think it's
Because
gonna
Lenny's
happen.
gonna die. The stuff with May won't work out for the obvious reasons, and they'll just come back together.
Yep.
And that's just a big old blot of me.
hmm
Other than that, whatever.
Yeah.
She doesn't
Uh,
need to become like Joan Rivers for me on
right.
the series. It doesn't need to go that far. But man, if I just would like to see her and Joel like move forward, connected for that they share children, but like separate. Please be
Yeah.
separate.
I agree. I don't really want to see that. I'm trying to think if there's anything I do want to see. I suppose it seems like Midge is probably going to make some pitch to the Gordon Ford show.
Mm,
So maybe seeing her do a little bit more of her like traveling, kind of like the Shy Baldwin, but playing like some big theaters around the United States, not Croatia that can only turn their power on once every week.
yeah.
Um, and yeah, I think other than that, I kind of just want to see some propulsion in Midge's career to feel like there's a little bit of payoff. Or if they go in the opposite direction, Midge just kind of putters out and like decides to be a Jewish mother on the Upper East Side, which kind of was her fate to begin with. I would be okay with that too. I just want to see it go in one direction and not just stay in the middle. So,
Yeah.
real
We'll
quick,
see.
just want to say, Amy Sherman Palladino brought back Milo Ventimiglio and
Yeah.
who's the matchmaker? Who's the mom from Gilmore Girls? I'm forgetting her name
Oh,
right
I
now.
didn't recognize her. I'm not too familiar with Gilmore Girls,
Yeah,
but the
let me
Milo
look
stuff
it
was
up.
great. I love that. I think he's credited as handsome man.
Which is just fantastic. Sorry, her name is Kelly Bishop, of course, who played like the head of the five families there, the one whose husband is dead. Um, but I thought that was just a little too much Gilmore Girl cameo for one episode. I wish they had spread that out a little bit because
Mm,
I was like,
fair.
oh, this is just a lot of Gilmore Girls right now. But um, it was nice seeing both of them back in, and Kelly Bishop getting a lot of work on Netflix. I believe she was in another show. I can't remember which one recently. So good look for her.
Yeah. Yeah, I think overall will how effective this fifth and final season is, I think will really color in how I feel about the series overall. Because I do look at season 4 as like a soft rebound season relative to seasons 2 and 3. So season 5 kind of continues this and has a moderately satisfying ending. I'll look on the show pretty fondly. But the season 1 highs and I guess like the hopes for the series probably have been dashed at least a little bit.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, definitely not going to be what we felt like it could have been, but still satisfying when it finds its groove. So why don't we stay on why don't we stay on streaming at least and go to Netflix, where the Adam Project dropped this past weekend.
Mm.
Uh, the Adam Project obviously dropped we were all waiting for. Uh, Ryan Reynolds, Jennifer Gardner, Zoe Saldana, Mark Ruffalo. I mean, all those people make a bad movie? Dave, did they make a bad movie?
It's not a great movie. This is the second Sean Levy Ryan Reynolds film in as many years. Obviously, coming off the very successful Free Guy that they made together. Now you have the Adam Project, the film that they both kind of resurrected from development hell. At one point, Tom Cruise was supposed to be in this movie, written a while ago. And they'll continue their relationship soon because Levy seems to be circling Deadpool 3, which is gaining some traction.
Hmm.
Which Levy, not too experienced in R-rated stuff, but hard to deny the creative chemistry he seems to be developing with Ryan Reynolds. So why not? But yeah, the Adam Project, not something I think anyone was super clamoring for investing. On the other hand, original, blockbustery fair science fiction movie, always commendable that something got made original that they spent a semblance of a budget on. So I give it all that kind of credit too. But yeah, I think this is like kind of like a weird like Ryan Reynolds cocktail. This movie, whereas I enjoyed Free Guy and I really appreciated that like the gaming culture and all the beats it had and breaking the fourth wall. I quite enjoyed Free Guy. This and I even liked him in Red Notice, even though Red Notice also a middling movie. Like I liked Red Notice, sue me, but like the Adam Project, I feel like this is like almost taking the wrong lessons, or at least taking the Ryan Reynolds overall a little bit too far. Like when you have like the little kid really laying down like Ryan Reynolds banter. I know he's supposed to be the same character, but having the little kid, the kid actor, also just trying to act like Ryan Reynolds for me was like too much. I don't know.
Yeah, I felt myself at certain points this movie being like, this is some of the dumbest shit I feel like I've watched recently. And then at other points being like, oh, that was actually pretty good. I kind of liked that. It's like such a mishmash of so many different genres,
Exactly.
right? You got the father and son, you got the sci-fi action thriller, you have the like dead wife, dead dad type stuff going on. And then you have the hero little kid movie going on. It's just like such an amalgamation. At some point, I just was
Exactly.
like, how many cliches are we going to kind of put into this? And I didn't feel like they did particularly any of them really that great. I guess the sci-fi looked okay at points, although the de aging on what's her name, Catherine Keener or something like
Yes.
that. Yeah, Catherine Keener was a little off putting at points. So I don't know, didn't totally work for me, but um, I guess I just kind of left being like, that movie is a lot. And when you
Mm.
talk about this being like the epitome of Ryan Reynolds is a lot. And so if you're
Yeah.
going to lean into him being the star and building the whole movie around him, I guess we got what they wanted. I
Yeah.
think a lot of people will like this movie to be a mindless, like, turn your brain off and just kind of enjoy the fake lightsabers and the time travel aspect and like the one liners. But overall, I just kind of like, why did Mark Ruffalo do this? Like, I get why Ryan Reynolds did it, but like, why would like some of these better actors sign on for this?
Well, on the other hand, like when Saldana shows up, I believe Led Zeppelin
Cool
was
scene.
roaring, right?
Yeah. Oh,
Like,
they had good music drops.
yeah, when she shows up, like, she has her intro into the movie, I was like, "Oh, you know what? It's great to see her without green face paint for once, you know?
Yeah,
Good
it
actor.
is.
Cool." You know? Oh, and I'm for this double for Mark Ruffalo. Also nice to not see him green, you know?
Mhm.
Cool. They're working. But,
Yeah,
like,
good point.
I think, yeah, you said it, the way I said it too, like, I think the mixture is just wrong with this film, like, it's like, the sci-fi dystopian future stuff is just super undefined and like way too nebulous for a movie that has like this much like hard sci-fi in it.
Yep.
And I think the action actually isn't bad. I think it looks good, but like, or at least looks good enough. Like it's well lit, you know. But like the story, like it's just so much exposition that like at Ryan Reynolds' mile a minute dialogue, it's it's really hard to follow. And like the kid also is doing the same kind of dialogue back to him, so it's like a lot to follow, even though it's not complicated. It's not like some intricate thing, but it's just like they're communicating it in a weird way. I guess I don't know. Yeah,
Yeah.
I guess I like the beginning more because like at its most conventional, right? Like you go on the chase,
Mhm.
and Saldana does like the last stand, sacrifices herself so they can escape. Like I enjoyed that stuff. That's fine. You know, having Zoe like shoot a machine gun at the dudes and blow up their car
Mhm.
and stuff. I'm like, yeah, cool. I've seen this before, but it's fine. But the wholesome moments, you know, with like once the dad comes back and the frail Ruffalo shows up, it's like a lot of that too was just a little bit up and down. You know, like it's pretty thankless Jennifer Garner turn, even though they're really trying to like hit you with some like family beats there. So you know, it's all right, but it's like weirdly like it's not ambitious, but like it's like muddled in like a mixed up cocktail to suggest it's super ambitious. I don't know. It's a weird one.
Yeah, it's definitely a weird one. I mean, there are some moments I definitely liked. I do think Walker Scobell, basically being told to do a Ryan Reynolds impression, does a pretty
Yeah,
good job. So
good
I
for him.
was, yeah, I was pretty impressed with him. Like you said, I think a lot of stuff with Saldana, like the action scenes with her, um, the, just injects an energy into things, and I think Ruffalo gets some nice moments. I think Jennifer Gardner, uh, very thankless role, just kind of being like the sad mom in all of this. I guess gets a nice like scene with Ryan Reynolds at that bar, but I don't know. That kind of gave me the heebie-jeebies at times, like weird vibes, because I think she thought the guy was like hitting on her, which just a strange thing to think about. But yeah,
Yeah,
you
Back
know
to the
who?
Future, basically.
Yeah, yeah, great point with probably what they were going for. Now that I think about it. Anyways, the biggest like nothing burger in this whole thing had to have been Christos, right? Alex Malari Jr. just kind of like showing up to be the guy like Catherine Keener's right hand man who just like
Yeah, it's
kicks
heavy.
ass all the time and then just gets murked like super easily at the end. I was like, oh man, thankless, thankless stuff. And then also the way that the Catherine Keener from the past dies. I thought it was so lame. I don't know. Like I wish that the Catherine Keener from the past had to make a decision and chooses to kill herself. You know, like or I guess her future self as a way of like stopping whatever, however things go. Like I, I'm not advocating for them to like show a suicide in here, but like to make some choice where like that character has some redemption would have made so much more sense than that character shooting a bullet that gets taken by this magnet and then kills her past self. Like, and then just like all the timeline, uh, like repercussions. I don't know. Didn't make any sense to me. So, not my favorite movie, Dave. Any last thoughts on this?
No, no, it's all good. You know, watch it if you want. I don't know.
Yeah. All right. And wrapping up today, let's go to a different streaming platform from Amazon to Netflix, now to Disney Plus. Turning Red. Uh, Disney Pixar's most recent film that they chose to drop on Disney
Mm.
Plus. I was a bit surprised by that decision, especially because animated films still do pretty well at the box office.
Yeah, this is their third in a row. They've released straight to Disney Plus following Luca and Soul and Luca. And this had been dated for this weekend, and then they bailed with Omicron, which was a bad call because this would have been successful. The box office is returning to life, and really, you just need more product out there. And you're seeing like good holds for movies like Uncharted, even while the Batman's doing great. Turning Red would have done great. Alas, it's on Disney Plus, the 25th Pixar film, so a lot of people get to see it easily, and I hope that's the case because I think it's a good one.
Yeah, I definitely think this is a strong Pixar film. Probably not one of my favorites. We'll talk about that a little bit more. Domi Shi, who's a Pixar veteran, worked on Inside Out, The Incredibles 2, Toy Story 4. So a lot of the more recent hits for
Yeah,
Pixar was
it's been
tapped
there
to
about
direct
10 years.
this. And obviously, I think it makes a lot of sense. Being an Asian American and this being a or a Chinese American, Chinese Canadian. Jeez, that's my bad. To Domi Shi, Chinese Canadian, and being tapped to tell a story about a Chinese Canadian. um, Definitely, I think there's a lot to dig into here. But Dave, overall, it sounds like you left Turning Red pretty impressed. I would say out of 10, I'd probably give this like a 6 or 7 for me. It wasn't
Hmm,
one of my
interesting.
favorites, and
Yeah.
I'll talk a little bit more about that. But I want to hear from you. What did you like?
Yeah. So overall, I was just impressed with how nuanced the like core themes of the story of Turning Red are. It shares a bit in common with a movie like Inside Out. The emotions of an individual. But I liked how messy this one was, and it makes a lot of sense because the story about a girl effectively going into puberty, something also pretty new for Pixar, right? But I liked how multifaceted this movie is thematically, while also still being really grounded. Like, yes, the our Mei Lin becomes a panda when she is no longer calm, but the story is still grounded. It's about her relationship with her friends and her family, and her family's relationship with other people in the family. Like, I just really appreciated like how much I think they actually had going on for a movie that's like pretty straightforward about a middle schooler. Uh, I really appreciate that. And, I think a lot of people have talked about like, soul, super existential, not really for kids. Inside Out, easier for kids to watch, perhaps, visually, but thematically, still not really for kids. This is, I think, like a much more accessible Pixar film for that, original target demo, and has a lot more under the hood, I think, than something like Luca or Onward, which is still movies I enjoyed, but not quite as, I think, thematically rich as Turning Red. So I liked it quite a bit. I don't like it, obviously, as much as like they're like A1 bangers of the past, but, it's the 25th Pixar movie. I think the fact that they can handle something in a more unique fashion the way they did this way, I think goes a long way for me. So that's why I liked it.
It definitely continues the trend of there not really being a antagonist within the film, right? Like, there's no bad person, there's no villain within this film, and I think that that's a great choice, and I'm glad that they continue to do this because it just fleshes out all the characters so much more. The conflict being a situation rather than a person is always, I think, much more interesting. I think what I was kind of left scratching my head about a bit, and maybe you can enlighten me your take on this. What did you see as actually being the bad thing about being the red panda? Why
Mm.
was that bad?
Well, I think it's kind of the obvious stuff of like you're this like big panda, and it's inconvenient, as the mom said. And also, the more it happens, the bigger and unwieldier the panda gets, as you saw with the mom at the
The
end,
mom.
which was a brilliant nod to like kaiju films and
Yeah.
Godzilla and whatnot. So I think that's kind of like the more, you know, fantastical element of the story.
Yeah.
But at the end, Malin, keeps the panda.
Mhm.
Just like Mirabelle in Encanto doesn't get any powers. They
Right.
kind of flip the trope on its head. Obviously, Encanto is not Pixar, but
Yep.
same kind of Disney trend we're seeing right now.
Yeah. So I would definitely buy into that being a conflict, except there's no repercussions in this movie for anything that happens with the red panda. And in
Mm,
fact, uh pretty much only benefits May in this story. Mei Lin being the red panda, making cash, getting to
yeah,
go see what was it, Four Door or whatever they
Fort
are.
Town, baby.
Four Town. And yeah, I guess I just kind of left being like, I'm not really sure why they don't want them to be the red panda, other than the red panda, I guess, can be scary at times because
Yeah,
people get angry, and also kind of the connection to someone becoming a woman, getting their period for the first time, menstruating for the first time. I think it was supposed to allude to like the mood swings that can come
yeah,
about when this happens. uh the Seeing that as like a superpower in a sense, or some sort of like fantastical element, I think is like a nice way to look at it, and a very like cool thing. But I guess I just didn't really see, like, in the end, like why the family really like was running away from it so much, and it kind of, the conflict felt a little bit confusing to me
yeah.
with
I
it.
think they just said that you lose control, and that's what
Yeah.
happened to the mom at the end. I think that's supposed to be the thing. But I liked how early on, like you said, there's like less conflict or consequence than you expect. But I actually like how they do that. It's set up as like this whole like body horror thing, like, oh,
Right.
I'm this beast and this is terrible. But then her friends are totally accepting of her and fucking love it that
Yeah.
she's a panda now.
It's awesome.
And it's another like I think flip of the expected outcome of the
Mhm.
storytelling. So
Yeah, I completely agree.
yeah,
I thought that was wonderful, and that whole like scene where they're scheming to get the money to go to see Four Town, and they're doing all the pictures and stuff.
yeah,
I thought that was pretty great, even if it didn't make any sense to me that, like, May now has this power that they're trying to hide from everybody, but this is the time that you're like, oh, now you can go join an after school club because we're not worried about you turning into this panda at all,
she
except for
convinced him.
very, I guess, like, she just was like, oh, I need to build out this resume for college, but I also am a panda half the time. Just that part didn't make any sense to me either. But I'm bagging on it. I think there's a lot to really love about this. First of all, the red panda, super cute, gonna sell a lot of red panda toys and merchandise for sure.
Mhm.
Pixar again, just crushing, I think, that aspect of it. But I really loved the dynamic with May and her friends. Like, that is where the movie hums,
Oh
obviously,
yeah,
and it's supposed to. That's where she feels loved. It's where she feels most accepted and understood. And so I think just the way that it makes those hangs so great, and those vibes are just on point, fantastic. Also, setting this back in the 2000s,
yeah.
the
O2.
demographic it's going for, my fiance, soon to be wife, was like, oh man, I remember all this stuff. I did all this stuff. I love all these outfits. I love, like, the way that they're
Mhm.
making like music videos and stuff. It
Yeah.
really like captured her in that moment. So that was great.
Fort Town is obviously supposed to be in sync, and I think even like sonically, like some of the melody of like that song "Nobody Like You," it's like tilt your head. It's not far off from like tearing up my heart.
Sure.
And really cool to see Billie Eilish and Phineas wrote the Four Town songs.
And making music that we want to listen to
Yeah, uh, I would
because
say
they're super talented.
let's make a Billy pop album, like a true pop album. Fucking do it, dude, because I know they'll write the shit out of it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think that was my main takeaway. Is I just was like, why? Where was this on the album? Like, I'm listening to
yes,
Oxytocin on repeat, just trying for any kind of drip of Billy charisma in that. No, I'm
yeah,
kidding. It's
yeah.
a lot of charisma, just not a lot of
Right.
earworminess to it.
I also really appreciate like Pixar promoting from within. Domi Shi, veteran, she had made the Bow short that accompanied Incredibles 2. Right after that happens, they start developing Turning Red. I think bringing that Chinese family perspective in like an authentic fashion into your film in this way, I think really effective. Similar to how Coco came across for the Mexican experience, same thing. Um, you had that really strange cinema blend review that got like trashed immediately, where the critics said that because Turning Red was about Chinese character, it was somehow like inaccessible to the audience, and like the cast was like clarifying that story for all. Like, I thought that was like a really strange comment, and they basically retracted that review since. But yeah, I think like I think it's important to see like Turning Red telling that kind of like Chinese immigrant story in a I think a meaningful but authentic way, unlike say like the live action Mulan, which did not come across as super realistic to what they were going for. And of course, all what's that it comes down to who's telling your story. So having Domi Shi have this opportunity after being at Pixar for so long, finding a lot of inspiration in making this film, I think that that heart, that care, really comes across, and you're seeing that experience online being shared. So, I think overall, it's also important to note that this is the fourth Pixar film in a row that is not a sequel. Onward, Soul, Luca, and Turning Red. The Pete Doctor era at Pixar, after John Lasseter left in disgrace, that Pete Doctor era seems to be humming along in a effective way. And of course, we're gonna end this sequel streak this June when Lightyear comes out, the Toy Story prequel we all wanted. But the fact that they still make something like Turning Red, still make something like Soul, you know, I think they're still trying to take their chances and do something at least a little different. That's what I like most about Turning Red is it feels like a Pixar film that's a different spin than what they've done before. That's why I like it.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to like here. Also, shout out to Sandra Oh, who
Yeah.
nice to see her in this the voice role as Ming Lee, May's mom, and
Yeah. Well, Ryan Lee
we
is the dad from First Cow. Nice look
yeah,
for him.
definitely a great look for him. So some really good stuff there. Also, Sandra Oh just I feel like needed this. She had such a come up when Killing Eve season one came out and was
Mm.
just in a lot of really great stuff. And I felt like had been kind of like middling, with Killing Eve not being as um and maybe not as beloved in more
Right.
recent seasons, and
The Chair at
even
Netflix, not that great.
exactly this is just like a nice like rebound in a sense for her. So
Yeah.
good
Great
stuff.
performance as the mom for sure.
Absolutely. I think we're gonna wrap up there for this week. Dave, next week I usually ask like what do we gotta be listening to, but we're just gonna go full out Oscars for next week, right?
That's correct. 2022 Oscars, March 27th. Got to make those predictions.
So we'll be talking about that. So stay tuned. Hit that subscribe on youtube.com/nostalgiapod and on Spotify, give us that 5-star rating. We'll catch you next week.